Guys, I'm Elle and welcome to Aging in Fashion. Guys, don't scroll. I see some of you, as soon as you don't see fashion, when you tune into Aging in Fashion, you get ready to hit that scroll button. Guys, don't scroll. Stay tuned. Grab yourself a seat. I'm going to take probably about 20, possibly 30 minutes because I have something very important I want to share with you. A week or so ago, I put out a video. It was called How Much Should I Be Eating versus How Much I Actually Do Eat. And in that video, I presented you with a lot of problems and I promised to come back with some solutions. So I'm here to make good on that promise today. So guys, pull up a chair, sit back, relax for a minute and learn a little something. So guys, today I want to talk to you about weight loss and better health using the power of subtraction. So guys, I want you to give yourself a little grace here, right? Because most of us think, oh my gosh, I eat too much, blah, 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 blah. A lot of things, we've been bamboozled. A lot of things we just have not been made aware of. And so that was the purpose of the video, just to make you aware that this food that we're eating, this food that we're consuming is very dense in calories, and even just tiny little morsels of it can cause the bad side effects, things like weight gain, water retention, hormonal changes, undesirable hormonal changes, decline in cognitive function, and just make us not really feel and look the way that we desire to look. Food, again, is our medicine, yet we find ourselves complaining of all these things. We are having the body aches, we are having the weight gain, the water retention, the hormonal changes, the decline in cognitive function, and again, all the undesirable things. So now guys, we are also going to have to give our parents a little grace as well because they have passed these bad eating habits down to us, but they didn't know any better, right? They only passed what they knew and they only passed what they felt is love, in the form of sugar and a little extra salt, a little extra seasoning. And basically also with the industrial revolution, the digital era and all the eras and all the mass, what should I say? Economic or political eras in our time have also brought us to be a generation of people or a society of people who want maximum results for minimal effort. And so food manufacturers recognize the need to produce or mass produce, make food available quick, fast, and in a hurry, also increase the shelf life. But in order to do that, they needed to add chemicals that they knew would be harmful to our bodies. So basically, we're not here to give them grace for that. As a result of becoming this society of people who want maximum results for minimal effort, we are finding ourselves turning to a lot of what I consider to be dangerous or risky methods of losing weight. We are surgery. We're losing lives to surgery every day. People are turning to injections. There's cryotherapy. There are pills that have been around. There are many methods. A person can sell you, oh my gosh, in a year's time, if you follow some of the methods that are being sold to us, you would need to increase your budget by thousands of dollars. As far as I know, the surgery known as BBL, or the transfer of fat, where they actually suck, the surgeries like liposuction, transfer of fat, those are thousands and thousands of dollars, and a good amount of us don't have the budget for that. And if we do, we find ourselves falling behind in other areas financially in life. And so, so I personally am afraid and cannot afford surgery. Also, surgery is one of those things that if you don't maintain, if you don't go back to the basics of just trying to eat or consume the right foods and exercise, then you're going to have to go back and repeat that surgery. And that is very expensive and very risky. Also, we're doing the injections. They are very expensive. I've heard people quote at least $500 a month. If I had $500 extra to spend, I don't really think that I would want to be using that budget I would want to be shopping. If I could spend $500 extra a month on shopping, and not just for the house. I mean, I would like to shop for my granddaughters. I have 3 of them. I love giving gifts. I love furniture. I love, all things for the house. And there's a lot that I could be doing with an extra $500 a month. And then there's cryotherapy. There's liposuction. All of those methods of getting rid of fat, prove to be very expensive, and they're just not in a lot of our budgets. And so this is why I offered a holistic and inexpensive, free, pretty much free, because what I suggest, or my method of subtraction, involves eat less, pay less, and weigh less. And guys, I would really love to be able to offer you some magic in a jar, but there is no magic. Let me just break it down. I don't know how much of your lifetime, you're not getting any younger. Let's just say this before we get into anything, or before we start saying, back to actually putting in work. Well, you're really actually going to have to put in some work. But the the best part about my method of subtraction is that you probably won't have to run a mile. You don't necessarily have to be in the gym, depending on the amount of weight. Now we know that if you start to lose in excess of 20 pounds, 9 out of 10, you're going to end up with some saggy skin. But it is good news to know that there are diets that, and methods of losing weight where, if you're doing a minimal amount of stretching, you can keep the muscle tone as you lose weight. Now, because I don't have an overnight sensation. I don't have some, witchy whatever. I don't have a magic pill in a jar, right? I'll explain. Okay, so guys, let's just get into this subtractive method of losing weight and maintaining better health, right? The first thing is that we need to reset our minds, right? We don't eat as a society, we don't eat for nutrition. We don't wake up in the morning and think about what our bodies need. We eat out of emotion and we eat for entertainment. And that is the first thing we need to subtract. I was watching a show. It's been a while back, right? I think it was one of the episodes of Sex and the City. And Carrie had gone to make peace with one of the neighbors or just to introduce herself, whatever. And she took some expensive pastry, some brownies or whatever. And when the young lady, her neighbor, opened the door, she said, I brought you some brownies, whatever, as a gesture of love or whatever. The young lady says, oh, thank you very much. She says, but we don't eat sugar. And I thought, wow, just to be able to make a profound statement like that, just to commit to something and stand on it. Like, who can resist brownies? Now, anybody in our society, let somebody come to my door, and I said last week, yeah, I'm getting ready to quit sugar. But here comes somebody with some brownies, right? Now, I assume that this young lady had been practicing this method of eating, for way longer than last week. However, even, you get what I'm saying, right? We don't commit to anything. We expect to be able to continue doing the same thing and get a different result. And we all know, basically, I'm quoting, and that is the definition of insanity, right? But we are not accountable to ourselves. We get up and we go to work. Our employers can depend on us to be there because we know that we are not going to have a roof over our heads and a lot of other things. We're not going to be able to eat the bad food. Just a lot of things. We're going to suffer if we're not accountable to the employer. However, we fail when it comes down to being accountable to ourselves. So we're going to have to make some commitments, guys. I really, again, would love to be able to offer you. As a matter of fact, I really don't want to offer you some magic pill because there is no magic in the pills. So, guys, we have to make a commitment, right? We're either going to continue to struggle with these same 20 or less pounds or 30, 40, 50, however many pounds. We are going to continue to let food control us, or we're going to start to controlling what we put in our mouths, right? Simple as that. Okay, so guys, the next step in this subtraction method is there are going to be certain aisles in the grocery store that you should make very few, if any, trips. You should actually subtract them from your grocery list, right? Or things that you purchase from the grocery store. This is one of my guilty pleasures right here, right? This is a box of Ritz crackers, right? Everything, it seems better when it sits on Ritz, right? But the reason that we're going to subtract this is because it is a processed and packaged food. As you can see, it is in that aisle, in that section that's probably going to say crackers, snacks, and you're probably along that aisle. If I can picture in my head, there's probably going to be some popcorn. There's going to be some other, forms of crackers, cookies and crackers, all sorts, an assortment of crackers and cookies and different snack food. When we look on the back of this box right here is going to give us a breakdown of the calories. It's going to tell us here, it says that there's about 21 servings in this box. And what they consider to be a serving is 5 crackers, right? Those 5 crackers, in those 5 crackers, there's going to be 80 calories. Then it goes on to break down that per sleeve, right? Which is this right here, right? The whole sleeve of this. This contains 210 calories, right? Now, we're not sounding very, very bad, but 45 grams of fat, and that in these crackers is like 8% of our daily value, or the amount of fat that we should consume. But then there's saturated fat. There is 1.5. Let me turn it around so I can read more fluently. 1.5 grams of saturated fat, and then there's trans fat. It says 0 grams. It says cholesterol. It has 0 milligrams. Sodium. It has 130 milligrams of sodium, which is 5% of our daily value. Total carbs is 10 grams. That's 4% of our daily value. Dietary fiber. It has 0 grams. Total sugars. It has 1 gram. This is per serving, guys. And added sugar, it has 1 gram, which is 2% of our daily value. Protein, it has less than 1 gram, right? Vitamin D, it has 0 milligrams. Calcium, it says 20 milligrams. Iron, it has zero point 0.5 milligrams. Potassium, it has 10 milligrams, which is 0% of our daily value. And the 5 milligrams of iron turns out to be like 2%. The 25 milligrams of calcium turns out to be 0% of our daily value, right? So basically, if I eat what's in this box, if I eat any of this box, I've consumed a lot of what we should be considered empty calories because the amount of nutrition in this box is not worth me putting in my body, right? And right, peanut butter, the same thing. It's going to list the what they consider to be right. But in my peanut butter, you would think that it just would be peanuts, right? Right, because peanut butter is made of peanuts. So this has about 5 ingredients, right, in it. It's not just peanuts, right? If I pick up something like this mango does not have, it does not list ingredients. It doesn't list calories, but it doesn't have a list. The only thing that it has on the list of ingredients, it says mango. You'll see that it says mango at the bottom. So if I eat this, I know that I'm eating a mango, right? This is some cloves. This is just ground clove, right? The ingredients back here on this side right here, ingredients, I like it. It says cloves, right? That's all it says. Cinnamon here doesn't even have a list. When you see here, it'll tell you who it's been manufactured and distributed by. But there are no list of ingredients because this is ground cinnamon, right? Purchase a pineapple, it's going to say pineapple. It's not going to list. The tag is going to tell me where it came from, who it's been manufactured and distributed by. Del Monte is the company. It'll have information like that, but you won't find any ingredients in this pineapple. A couple more things here. This is some Parmesan cheese, right? This is a Kroger brand. Um, Basically, ingredients, when we look back here, a paragraph, whole paragraph of ingredients. I'm not going to read them all because I don't want to take up the time. Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce, right? Love it, right? Look at the ingredients, a whole list of ingredients. And guys, when we talk about hidden sugars, right, we have to be made aware that there are hidden sugars in every one of these containers. Sugar. Now, here's another package that is very interesting, right? This is a packet of chicken, right? Now, when we get down here, it does tell us the calories, the nutritional value. It lists all of that, but there are no ingredients, right? When we purchase a packet of meat, we should not be looking to see ingredients. So guys, what am I trying to tell you with this message, all these little demonstrations, basically? When we look at the back, when we look at the packaging of anything that has been packaged, we see a list of ingredients, and a lot of those ingredients have no nutritional value, and a lot of them will cause adverse reactions in our digestive system, like cramping, bloating, water retention. Most of the products that I showed you were contain sugar. You'd expect when you say I want a sweet treat, you look at things like things that are sweet, cookies, candies, but you don't expect that when you're eating a bag of potato chips or you're eating a cracker or that you're even eating peanut butter that you're consuming sugar. Sugar is one of the ingredients that is hidden in our foods, right? In the packaging. When it came down to mass production, the reason I mentioned the industrial and digital, the different eras in life where we were trying to progress and make things more convenient, nutrition was omitted. It was overlooked in a big way. The main purpose or the main goal in mass production is to produce large quantities and keep a chain of supply to large quantities of people and make a lot of money. Um, Increasing the shelf life of a product sometimes decreases its nutritional value. So in other words, we are consuming a lot of what our bodies don't recognize. When our bodies don't recognize it as food, it processes it as a fat. One thing for sure is that we have to eat, right? Food is our source. Food is our source of energy. Food is our source of vitamins. Food is our source of health, and we have to eat. And the other thing for sure is that we live in a society where most of us are not even in areas where we can grow gardens and grow our own vegetables. It became a movement somewhere around between the 80s, 90s. It got pretty popular that you would hear about these city farms and people trying to, you know, um, grow gardens within in not the suburbs, but the urban areas as well as the suburbs. You'll find a few people attempting to grow their own crops. But I just want to say this, that when I grew up, we consumed mostly fresh vegetables that came from my grandmother's and my great auntie's gardens. Um, I was raised in a rural area where there weren't any convenience stores within reach. Um, I would have to actually walk. If my parents weren't home and they weren't taking us to the store. And then you got to realize there were like 7 or 9 of us. And so, there wasn't money. We couldn't afford the snacks, even if we could get to them, right? But stores were, quite a distance away where we lived. I grew up in a very rural area. And there were a lot of things that I regret about my past, but one of the things that I value most is the nutrition. Um, for snacks, a lot of times we would go and rob the neighbor's cornfield and maybe just take a piece of corn, boil the corn. My grandmother, my grand aunt, and my great aunt grew things like peanuts, sweet potatoes, tomatoes. There were an abundance of fruits and vegetables that just grew wildly in addition to the planted gardens. And so when my mother went to prepare a meal, she was using collard greens, right? Just say, for instance, she wanted to cook collard greens. There were no ingredients. Of course, we had to wash the pesticides, the dirt, and the elements. Elements are necessary. Again, there is no way that we can avoid. There's no way that we can grow vegetables outside without being bothered by the pests, the pesky things, the worms, the whatever the bugs that come to try to rob us of our meals because they have to eat too. It's all a part of the ecosystem. So to avoid ruining the crops, they do have to use something to some herbicides or some pesticides, to keep that from happening, right? But yeah, I grew up with a plethora of nutrition at my fingertips, which is quite unusual. And even though there were times after my father died, my mother decided to go to school and get a job. And so she became a part of the working society. She worked outside of the home. And so at that point, we were probably adolescents, old enough to watch one another and prepare the dinners. And that was when canned goods got introduced into our diets. Yeah, so, but we would always, our staples were, when we say we were eating a wholesome meal, it was probably predominantly a fresh vegetable, possibly, a starch. Everybody says you eat a vegetable, a starch, and a meat, right? And your plate would probably consist of those three things and some bread. And then you did have some Kool-Aid. Not going to try to act like we were like perfect or we had the perfect diet, but we consumed predominantly clean food. So when I say clean food, what I consider to be clean food is that if I'm going to eat some corn, I'm not going to make fried corn. My mother used to make fried corn on special occasions. If I'm going to eat a sweet potato, I'm probably going to bake it in the oven. And I'm going to add any other ingredients that I want, but versus a sweet potato pie. Casseroles, Alfredo dishes have become very popular in our society. Lots of people every time we go to a restaurant. And then the habit of eating in restaurants, right? We have to subtract that. We have to subtract that and let that be on a special occasion only basis. Some of us are eating out of restaurants, fast food restaurants, and even sit down restaurants a lot more than what we used to. The idea of an appetizer, I don't know who came up with eating a meal before the meal. I don't get an appetizer because when I go to a restaurant, if I don't have an appetite, what's the point of me going? So I don't see how I don't even know why they named it appetizer, right? Because that to me denotes that it's going to give me an appetite when in fact it's actually going to spoil my appetite. It's going to cause me to eat more food than what I would normally consume if I were just at home sitting down in my mother's kitchen where there was possibly some cornbread, some string beans, some kind of potatoes, and a meat and some Kool-Aid. So guys, let's just imagine one morning we get up, and instead of having the hot breakfast that we are accustomed to having in our diets, the one that we grew up on, the bacon, the eggs, the sausage, and the grits with a biscuit, and then we're gonna Put a little butter on top of the biscuits. Then we're going to slice that biscuit open. We're going to put our little jelly up inside of that, or maybe some butter, some more butter on the inside of it. We're going to add some butter to our grits. Some of us like cheese in our grits. We're going to add cheese in our eggs because everybody loves cheese eggs, right? And then we're going to have a cup of coffee. We're going to have cream, and we're going to put some sugar in there, most of us, right? And then perhaps we're going to have some juice. And oh gosh, God forbid, some of us are actually having things like Coke and soda for breakfast, right? Picture this. What if we actually made a commitment and kept that commitment to ourselves and practice eating clean food versus all the other stuff that we've discussed for a long period of time? What if we could eat ourselves out of the same situation that we ate ourselves into? Okay, guys, I can hear some of you right now thinking or saying, she done lost her mind. What does she think? I'm going to be walking around eating fruits and vegetables, chopping up carrots and nibbling on apples and stuff. That stuff's not going to keep me full. But guys, now picture this. I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking, right? I got all my things laid out, getting ready to put everything on the stove. And my little granddaughter, let's just, for instance, let's just say so my little granddaughter walks in, right? And I said, baby, can you reach up there in the cabinet? Can you reach up there in the cabinet and hand me hand me that boric acid? And she comes to me and she's like, huh? Like, grandma, you mean this? Yeah, yeah, baby, that's it. Yeah, I gotta sprinkle a little bit on I'm gonna sprinkle a little bit on the collard greens. I'm gonna add a little bit to the corn and cornbread, yeah, I just put, I just need a little pinch, here and there. And she says, but grandma, she says, but back here, this says warning. Isn't this poison? And I'll be like, yeah, baby, but don't worry, I just put a little pinch. I put a little pinch over here in the collard greens and I put a little pinch. And she's like, but for what? And I'm looking like, well, I mean, baby, it makes the food, but it makes the food taste better. And she's like, my grandma, isn't it going to kill me? No, baby, don't worry about that. It's not going to kill you. I'm just going to put just a little bit in there, right? You don't have to worry about that. My grandma, it says poison. Yeah, but I'm just putting just a little bit. I'm not gonna put enough in there to kill you. Not today. Anyway, like, you don't have to worry about that. And she's looking at me like, but what is it gonna do to me? Well, baby, it's not gonna do anything to you today, but maybe by the time you get about 20, you probably start noticing your ankles might swell a little bit, you might get a little bloated. It adds a little extra fat, but it's worth it because it makes the food taste so much better. Right? And then we can put it in the refrigerator and we don't have to worry about it spoiling. And yeah, so, it's not gonna, but grandma, you're putting poison in our food. You're putting poison in our dinner. Oh, yeah, baby. But, again, I mean, you don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, probably by the time you get about 35, 40, I mean, you might have a little, you might see your ankle start swelling. You might, notice that, I mean, you might pick up a little weight, but they got stuff for that. The doctors these days, they got all kinds of medicine to take care of that. And she's looking at you like, with grandma, and she's like, looking at her mom and dad, and she's like, y'all need to come and get grandma. Grandma's going crazy. She is killing us up in here. So guys, these are the choices we made, right? These are the choices. If I blatantly told you that I was putting a little taste of poison in your food, not enough to kill you today, but down the line, yeah, you probably, might have a little heart problem. You might, have a little problem, little night sweats, or, you might gain weight, you might not be able to lose weight. Yeah, whatever complications, right? Would you be willing to just continue on a diet when you know for sure I'm admitting blatantly that I'm actually putting things in your food? Answer that for yourself. So, guys, there you have it. My eat less, pay less, and weigh less method of subtraction. Guys, I realize that some of you may want to know some recipes or actually, how to put this in action. So if you're interested, please say so in the comments, right? Let me know. Let me know. Thank you guys for watching. Yeah, thank you for staying all the way to the end. And as always, peace, love, and happiness for the rest of your life.